Joining me now is Shailin. Shailin is the CEO and co-founder of Method Media Intelligence. He founded the company back in 2017 with the purpose of providing innovative solutions that really helps marketers navigate the highly fragmented digital media ecosystem to ensure media investments are spent wisely on quality online channels. Shailin will be providing an overview of the digital ad tech landscape and how to identify online media leaks to improve efficiencies and ROI. We also have a polling question that will be happening at the end of this session, so I do encourage you to participate in that. So Shailin, I will hand over to you.
Thank you. Right. Hello, everyone. I want to thank ProcureCon for having us for this virtual conference. Today, I'm going to be covering the 4 areas where digital media campaigns leak and what we can do about them. So the first thing to start, digital ad impressions are a perishable commodity, which means that there's far less that actually complete the entire process than are initiated. And they happen at various stages through different suppliers in the ad tech supply chain. One of the most overlooked inefficiencies is people assume that whatever the advertiser is billed for is an actual completed ad impression. And that's not the case when we'll go into the actual layers that contribute to that. First, we have to acknowledge 40% of internet activity, 40% is a conservative estimate, is non-human initiated. And when 40% of the population of something is counterfeit, essentially, we need to have an exoneration approach to detecting that, which means we assume it's a bot until we can verify that it's human or a human operable machine. And so device checks are coming more and more important as the overwhelming majority of automated traffic is coming from data centers. And for that purpose, ad verification really should be a utility, and it should be priced that way because when the prices are as high as they've traditionally been, it actually disincentivizes the use of monitoring and verification. So the 4 places where digital media budgets leak are invalid traffic, brand suitability and content adjacency, non-renders, and non-viewable ads. For IVT, the industry kind of estimate that we see across the marketplace is 15%. For brand safety violations, it's about 5%. Non-renders are 15%. Non-renders are when you purchase and win the opportunity for an impression, but no ad actually ends up serving. And non-viewable ads are about 25% of the overall marketplace. So why do these happen? Invalid traffic continues to be an issue because 40% of web activity is non-human. And so when typically people use pre-bid as some sort of universal safeguard against invalid traffic, but pre-bid, pre-transaction invalid traffic detection doesn't have any on-device or client-side measurement capability. So we're relying on things like user agent and IP address, and those can be easily spoofed with the use of proxies and headless browsers. The important thing to do when having the IVT detection post-bid is make sure you have a reconciliation process in place, and we'll go into that in a couple slides. Brand safety and suitability, again, most of this detection and enforcement is done post-transaction. And so it's important to know what you're willing to pay for in terms of brand unsafe or unsuitable environments versus completely unsafe to the brand, things like graphic violence or pornography. Non-renders contracts typically are based on auctions won when you're contracting with the demand side platform. And it's important for marketers to know the difference and transition to actually being built on ad server numbers. Non-viewable ads, we see a lot of people in the industry using pre-bid viewability. That's not a guaranteed viewability. It's just predictive based on historical measurement that unfortunately is sampled. And it does actually hurt publishers because it reduces the opportunity for specific placements to get purchased and actually accumulate viewability metric that's positive over time. So we take these estimates and apply them to $1 million budget. 15%, 150,000 goes to non-rendered ads, 150,000 goes to robotic browsers, 50,000 is spent on brand unsuitable impressions, and 250,000 is spent on impressions that don't end up being viewable. And this only leaves 400,000 that are spent on ads that fit the requested targeting and have potential value to the advertiser. And again, that's potential value. So we're going to go through the 8 stages of billable events before it actually reaches the marketer. So the first step is the user actually visits the website or the app and the page starts loading. Step number 2, the publisher's ad server sends a request for bids to the exchange. Step 3 is the actual hosting of the auction between the supply side platform and the demand side platforms. And the DSP buyers will place their bids for that impression. And again, we're still, at about 50 milliseconds into this process. Step 4 is the auction actually being won by the highest bidder. And step 5 is the highest bidder's DSP makes a request to the marketer's ad server to send the actual creative that's intended for that placement. And here's where MMI actually measures, is between this closing of the auction and the request to the ad server. And after the request to the ad server will deliver the actual ad creative file to the web property. And so that creative actually downloads to the page. And the step 8 is when it actually begins to render and load onto the screen. So we're going to dive into the details of each of these points. Invalid traffic, pre-bid capabilities are limited extremely to a few probabilistic data points: user agent, IP address, and some sort of cookie profile matching. There's no client-side measurement that can be done in pre-bid. You're relying purely on the bid information, which doesn't allow real measurement. It's just IP filtering and user agent filtering. The majority of invalid traffic detection is done post-bid, but the issue with that is you need a reconciliation process to actually address the 2%, 6%, or 15% invalid traffic that's detected. If you don't have a reconciliation process in place, you're merely measuring the waste and never doing anything about it. So it's very important to work with a verification vendor that has reconciliation process in place for their clients. Brand suitability and adjacency, again, the majority of this detection is done post-transaction. And so after you've actually paid for the impression, can you actually see the full context of where it's serving? So the full URL and any sort of page information that the verification vendor has crawled or analyzed previously. When we see those default ads in place, there was a lot of conversation at the beginning of the coronavirus lockdown about news being demonetized. But when you do see those default ads being served or a PSA, that does mean that the advertiser still paid for that ad slot. It's not that the publisher just gave it away for free. Viewability, the viewability measurement starts after the ad creative is fully rendered and actually loads on the page. So it's after step 8. We don't recommend pre-bid viewability at all. We see it as very harmful to publishers because it reduces the opportunity for different placements to even get monetized and therefore can't accrue any sort of viewability history. Non-renders, this is very important for the procurement audience at this conference. Non-renders are the discrepancy between your DSP numbers and your ad server numbers. Typically, this is around 15%. There's very few malicious reasons that this happens. Most of the time, it's just the natural occurrence of timeouts or any sort of miscommunication between servers. And it's very important to know whether you're being billed on auctions won or creatives downloaded. There's a few companies that by default bill on the actual downloaded creative number, but the majority of this industry is billed on auctions won. And so that's about 15% waste that can be addressed with contractual changes. So the order of operations, we have to start with billing transparency, knowing what event am I paying for. Second, making sure that you have only human traffic in your analytics data set. So is the user human or robotic? Step 3 in the order of operations is, did it actually appear on the screen? And if it did appear on the screen, then step 4, is it in an environment that's safe and suitable for your brand? And then after all of that has been checked, can you do step 5, which is attribution or ROI calculation? Was this actually worth it? We've been lucky to have the ISPA PwC report circulating in the industry the past couple of months. It's an issue that we talk about frequently, the inability to actually match impressions down the supply chain. And now that this issue is front and center in people's minds, we've been having a lot of great conversations with clients. The MRC standards are moving to begin to render. The MRC is the measurement standards organization here in the US, and they're trying to move platforms to begin to render, which is after step 8 in that process. It's a great thing to move towards that, but when the majority of billing is still being done on auctions 1, begin to render is 2 steps away. And so we have to make sure that the measurement standards stay with the actual billing models. The important thing to know with MMI is that we are fully privacy compliant as a measurement organization. And because we do all deterministic checks, we're able to actually monitor and report on 100% of impressions. So when you're doing your analytics, there's no sample data sets, and we don't add any latency to the process because our check is only 5 milliseconds. That's it for my session today. I appreciate everybody listening, and hope you're able to take some of these learnings back to your teams.
Great, thank you, Shailin. And as mentioned earlier on, we have a polling question coming up now, so do participate in that and stay tuned for the next session. Thank you.